الشيخ إن شاء الله. بداية باسمكم واسم جمعية الكوثر الإسلامية نشكر سماحة السيد دارسي لحضوره لهذه الليلة، نسأل الله له التوفيق إن شاء الله. برنامجنا الأسبوع المقبل إن شاء الله برنامج 400 الإمام الحسين راح يكون يوم السبت والأحد، السبت ليلا والأحد نهارا إن شاء الله. يوم السبت راح يكون صلاة، نبدأ بالصلاة وإن شاء الله بعد الصلاة بالمحاضرة لسماحة الشيخ أبو هدى ونظمية إن شاء الله.
صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا.
Convey people. Now sometimes this kind of conveying, this communication is through our tongue. We make some sounds, we talk, we say a word or two, we use a language that we all understand and we communicate. Yeah? Sometimes we don't use our words. Sometimes we use our actions. Yeah? Sometimes I simply go towards the water and I drink from it. And somebody will see me walking towards the water, drinking from it. They will know that I was thirsty. Yeah. So I didn't have to tell them I am thirsty. I just walked towards the water and I had some water. So they understood, right? Sometimes I don't do certain things and I tell people something about me. Yeah. Sometimes in the month of Ramadan, when your friends, your family, they see you, you're not touching food, you're not eating, right? You're not drinking, you're not doing things that will make your fast batil, right? By not doing all of these things, you're telling somebody that, hey bro, I'm fasting. Yeah? Yeah. And sometimes we say it as well, but sometimes by not doing some things, we are conveying something to everybody around us that something's going on here, right? But sometimes we don't even say something or do something or not do something. Sometimes we're just there, and this is something that our youth are very good at, mashallah. They use something called body language. Yeah. Sometimes you sit a certain way, you're sending a message. Sometimes you sit a certain way like that, you're sending another message. You're sending a message, you're communicating, right? Sometimes you look at somebody like that, you're sending them a message. Sometimes you look at them like that, you're sending them a message, right? It's all body language, right? You're not speaking anything, you're not doing anything, you're not doing anything, but you're using something that your body is using to tell somebody a message, right? Now these are all ways that we use to not use our words. Sometimes we even use something in the middle, and that's called sign language. We use a sign. So now, I'm sure some of you here know how to use a sign language, right? American Sign Language or British Sign Language. I don't know if we have a Canadian Sign Language yet. But they usually have some signs that they make to indicate certain alphabets. Yeah? And with those alphabets, they sign what they want to tell somebody. Right? Now, did you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also communicates with us verbally? Allah, the one who has created us, the one who has given us everything, the one who has given us the guidance. He has told us what is right and what is wrong, what is good and what is bad. He has conveyed His message to us through words. What are those words called? The Holy Quran. Allah has given us those words, and those have come to the Holy Prophet Muhammad al-Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. So on one hand, He's given us His words. He's called to us with words in the Arabic language. بِلِسَانٍ عَرَبِيٍّ مُبِينٍ. In the wonderful, very eloquent, very clear Arabic language. Yeah? But sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala communicates to us through actions. Whose actions? Through the actions of the Holy Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt. Allah tells us in the Quran, مَا آتَاكُمُ الرَّسُولُ فَخُذُوهُ وَمَا نَهَاكُمْ عَنْهُ فَانْتَهُوا. Whatever the Prophet tells you, gives you, take it. Whatever the Prophet says no, don't do it. So the Prophet does something, you do the same. The Prophet stops from something, you also stop. The Ahlul Bayt do something, we do it too. The Ahlul Bayt stop from something, you also stop. Right? So actions are telling us something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. But brothers and sisters, even the body language of the Ahlul Bayt, when Ahlul Bayt don't do something as well, is a message for us. Right? You know the maraji or the ulama, the fuqaha, those ulama, the scholars in the hawza, their job is to do this. Their work is to know what Allah has given us through His words and through the actions of Rasulullah and the Ahlul Bayt, and to tell us what is the right thing to do and what is the wrong thing to do. Yeah, that's their job. But there's one way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala communicates that is not only for the ulama, that is for everybody. It's for everybody. Yeah? And interestingly, it's for the people who are smart. Are you with me, inshallah? Let's go to that discussion now. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls these smart people the ulul albab in the Holy Quran. These people who have intellect, they are strong in the way they think. They know how to think right. They know how to think about the good and the better thing to do. When you give them two good things to do, they'll tell you which one is the better thing to do. When you put them in a situation that there's two bad things, they'll tell you which one is more bad and which one is less bad. They're that smart. Yeah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Holy Quran about these people, and He says, these people are those who are always looking out for Allah's sign language. Now, what is sign language in the Holy Quran? In the Arabic language, something that is a sign is called an ayah. Ayah. Right? An ayah in Arabic means a sign. Now there's something interesting about an ayah. You know, Arabic language is so beautiful, it's so deep, that simply the word ayah does not only mean sign. If you're interested, there's more meaning inside the word ayah. This sign needs to be something that startles you, that surprises you, that makes you go into ta'ajjub, makes you surprised, makes you interested, makes you curious. That's how an ayah is supposed to be. The other thing that the lexicographers, the ones who talk about the lugha and the Arabic language, they tell us, an ayah not only makes you think into it and deeply about it, it actually has a message for you. It has an ibrah. So an ayah will always have an ibrah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran tells us, إِنَّ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاخْتِلَافِ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ لَآيَاتٍ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. In the coming and going of the day and the night, in the creation of the heavens and the earth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed some signs. Has placed signs. For who? For the ulil albab, the people who are people of intellect, people who are smart. Alright? Inshallah, we all are smart people, right? So we're looking out for those signs that Allah has placed in His creation. Right? Now, interestingly enough, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, go and study the science. Now, how many, you can raise your hands if you like, how many of you like science? How many of you like to actually go out and in the night sky, go watch the stars? Yeah? How many of you actually like to go hiking on top of the mountains? Around here, mashallah, we have lots of mountains. And you like to go on top of, say, Mount Cyprus, or Grouse, or wherever, Seymour. And you go on top of the mountain and then you look down upon the whole city. Subhanallah, you go. You say, Subhanallah, alhamdulillah, wa la ilaha illallah, wallahu akbar. There's so much beauty in there. It's so beautiful. We always like to go to places where we can see these beautiful things, because these beautiful things are actually reminding us of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are a sign of Allah for us. They are an ayah of Allah for us. And Allah is reminding us not only in the creation of the heavens and the earth. He says in everything around you, there is my sign. So let's go to the sign language of Allah. God's sign language, Allah's sign language is actually all around you. Allah is speaking to me and you. Allah is talking to me and you. Everything around us is calling us towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The question is, do we understand God's sign language or not? Many people see everything around them, but very few people pay attention to the things around them. Brothers and sisters, this is very interesting. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has invited us. He has even told His holy Prophet, Muhammad al-Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, the Holy Prophet was told to go invite people to the message of Islam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Jumu'ah tells us, what was the first stage? What was the first marhala that the Holy Prophet had to do to invite people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? هُوَ الَّذِي بَعَثَ فِي الْأُمِّيِّينَ رَسُولًا مِّنْهُمْ. Right? Allah is the one who has sent forward towards the people a messenger from within themselves. يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِ. The first thing the messenger has to do, the prophet has to do, is to recite the ayat of Allah to the people. Brothers and sisters, these ayat of Allah are the Holy Quran, the verses of the Holy Quran. The ayat of the Holy Quran are actually translated as verses, but but they can also be translated as signs of Allah. There's a scholar who actually beautifully compares the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran versus the signs of Allah around us in creation. And it says some of His signs are qawli. They are verbal signs. Some of the signs of Allah are fi'li. They are actions. Everything around you that you see are the actions and the signs of Allah that are fi'li. But then there are certain signs of Allah that are qawli, which are in the Holy Quran. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Brothers and sisters, these signs of Allah are around us, and I want to get to a very important point here. The signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are not only around us in nature. One of the things that Allah tells us in the Holy Quran about His signs is that when the signs of Allah are brought to the people, they have an impact on the hearts of the people. In the Holy Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Talaq, verse number 11 says, رَسُولًا يَتْلُو عَلَيْكُمْ آيَاتِ اللَّهِ مُبَيِّنَاتٍ لِيُخْرِجَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ مِنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إِلَى النُّورِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's prophet, when he comes with the signs, when he conveys the signs of Allah, when he recites the verses and the ayat of the Holy Quran to the people, it has an impact on the people. It should have an impact. And that is, it takes people away from dhulumat towards the nur. It takes people away from misguidance towards guidance. Brothers and sisters, normally we have mu'mineen come, they ask questions, say, Sheikh, my son, my daughter, they're having issues, they have these questions, they have these challenges, they have these questions that are doubts in them, their aqidah is not strong enough. What can we do about it? How can we help our kids come out of these shubuhat and these doubts and misconceptions? The very first thing, we go back to the Holy Quran that tells us the first thing we have to do as parents with our brothers and sisters, the youth, is to introduce them to the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. From a very young age. From a very young age. How many of us actually do this? How many of us actually take our kids into the nature and marvel at the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with our children, so that they know that these are signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala around us, and they realize that these are there to connect them with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we do this, brothers and sisters, these signs will completely transform our children's hearts and minds. They will marvel. They will be excited to see these things around them. But with this very important condition, that they realize that these signs are going to remind them of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Brothers and sisters, I wanted to get into a deeper discussion, but I will wrap it up, inshallah. I realize that the scope of our discussion may not allow us for that. But I do want to point out to one of the great signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in today's day and age. And this sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so clear, is so apparent, is so attractive, that you will see the enemies of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala want to hide it. They want to hide it. They don't want to talk about it. And the sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I am going to talk about today, the rest of the time that we have, is the event that is going on right now in Iraq. It is the the Masira of the Arba'in. It is the Arba'in walk, my dear brothers and sisters. The Arba'in walk is one of the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala today. It is that event that has the maximum number of human beings involved at one time in human history. People are walking, not only for 3 days from Najaf to Karbala. I know people walk from Basra for almost 2 weeks, 3 weeks, mashallah, 20, 21 days, even from other cities, from the north of Iraq, from the east of Iraq, from the west, south, wherever, and from other countries as well, mashallah. People walk, and they're walking for one reason. They're walking for Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. They're walking for Aba Abdullah. This sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we have right now called Al-Arba'in, I will ask you and request you to go do some research. How many of today's most popular news outlets talk about Al-Arba'in? You ask CNN, you ask BBC, you check on CBC News. I have been personally checking on CBC, on CNN, on BBC for the past 10 years. Past 10 years. Yeah. And the Arba'in numbers have grown over these past 10 years. They have increased every year, mashallah. But when it is the day of Arba'in and there are thousands and millions of people gathered in Karbala, if there is another event in the world, they will cover all the events in the world, but they will not cover the event of Arba'in. Subhanallah. Ajib. It's surprising. What's going on here in Arba'in? What's going on in Karbala? What's going on in Iraq? What's up with this Mashaya and the whole Masira of Arba'in? That people are not reporting on it. Why is it so difficult to report? We have Olympic Games, mashallah, everybody reports on it. We have, Alhamdulillah, Hajj, they report on it, at least somewhat. They have the Hindu Kumbh Mela that they have in India, they have millions of people gathered there, they report on it. Yeah. Why do people not report on Arba'in? Why are they hiding it? What is happening that is so powerful that if the people of the world come to know about it, there will be something that is a problem? Interesting. Now, I will let you answer this question, let you think about this question, inshallah. But I personally believe that this ayah and the sign of Allah that we also call Sha'a'ir Allah, this is very important. Brothers and sisters, ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are around us. If we interact with them, if we understand them, if we convey to them, it's one thing. But when we do things that Allah has expected us to do with those signs of Allah, they're called the Sha'a'ir of Allah. For example, in the Holy Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the Sha'a'ir of Allah. Sha'a'ir means the actions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has asked us to do that remind people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that awaken in the hearts and minds and the shu'ur of the people the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran says, Inna safa wal marwata min sha'a'irullah. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us Safa and Marwa, the two mountains, are from the sha'a'ir of Allah. He doesn't say ayat of Allah, he says sha'a'ir of Allah. Why? فَمَنْ حَجَّ الْبَيْتَ أَوْ اعْتَمَرَ فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْهِ أَنْ يَطَّوَّفَ بِهِمَا. Whoever goes for Hajj, whoever goes for Umrah, they perform the tawaf. In this case, أَنْ يَطَّوَّفَ بِهِمَا means the sa'i, right? Between Safa and Marwa, you go, start from Safa, go to Marwa 7 times, and you end at Marwa. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not calling this tawaf, this sa'i, as sha'a'ir. He's saying Safa and Marwa are the the only people who will give respect and ta'aleem and reverence and magnify the status of the sha'air of Allah, those items of existence, those things that remind people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's because they have taqwa in their hearts. Brothers and sisters, the Arba'in is another sha'air min sha'air Allah. It's shi'ar min sha'air Allah. It is one of those actions that is reminding not only us about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is when all of these mu'mineen gather from all over the world, from different languages, from different cultures, from different ethnicities, from different nationalities, they come together in one place, and their slogan is Hubbul Hussein Yajma'una. The love of Imam al-Hussein gathers us all together. This is going to remind people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is going to remind people of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein and his sacrifice for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's going to remind people of ladies of the Ahlul Bayt and the sacrifices of the families and the children of the Ahlul Bayt for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Brothers and sisters, in this sha'air of Allah that we have in Arba'in, with all that karama and that sharafa that they have learned from Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam, right? Now here we find that people are actually showing us how life will be when Imam al-Mahdi reappears. You want to know how? I'll tell you how. Let's go back to a very important message that Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam wrote when he arrived in Karbala. Imam al-Hussein Abu Abdullah, he arrived in Karbala on the 2nd of Muharram. And the moment he pitched his tent and he sat down, he wrote his last letter to his brother Muhammad al-Hanafiya. He writes a letter to Muhammad al-Hanafiya, and I'll make it very short. And the letter of Imam al-Hussein is also very short. It's just 2 sentences. Yeah? He says, from Hussein ibn Ali to Muhammad ibn Ali al-Hanafiya, and whoever is around him from the Ahlul Bayt, from the Banu Hashim. فَأَمَّا بَعْدَ. Right? 2 sentences. He says, فَكَأَنَّ الدُّنْيَا لَمْ تَكُنْ وَكَأَنَّ الْآخِرَةَ لَمْ تَزَلْ وَالسَّلَامُ. That's it. End of the letter. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam is giving us a message here. He's sending his last letter to his family, his brother Muhammad al-Hanafiya, and to the Banu Hashim in Medina. He's saying, it feels as if the dunya never existed. كَأَنَّ الدُّنْيَا لَمْ تَكُنْ. And it seems as if the akhirah was always there, always was alive, was Hussein leaves us from this land of Karbala a very important last message. He says, always remember, this dunya that you have around you, it's not worth it. Think of it as if it does not exist and it will never exist forever. But the akhirah will always be there. It will always exist, whether you see it or not, whether you feel it or not. The sha'air Allah is actually connected to actually having the shu'ur of this akhirah. When we have a connection with the sha'air Allah, when we go for hajj, when we go for arba'in, when we go for ziyarah, it actually connects us to the akhirah. That is what Imam Hussein is reminding us. And brothers and sisters, in Al-Ba'in, you see people are not worried about their dunya at all. You see people come to you, they'll give you their food. They are hungry, they will feed you food. They are thirsty, they will feed you water. They'll quench your thirst. They'll feed you chai. They'll say, "Hala bizwara bisajjal." Yeah? They say, please come, stay in my house, rest here, I will give you a massage, I will feed you whatever you need, I'll wash your clothes, everything I'll do for you. Some people even collect money for the whole year just so that they can spend it on the zawar of Abi Abdullah Hussein during Arba'in. If they wanted the dunya, they would just collect the money and go for a vacation. They would go somewhere nice. They will spend it in a restaurant. No. They collect money. They save money. They sometimes even loan and do qard of money so that they can spend on Imam al-Hussein's visitors, Zuwar of Imam al-Hussein. Why? Because their dunya is nothing for them, but their akhirah is Imam al-Hussein. That's it. That's what matters for them. And when you go for Arba'in, and when you see these people, you feel this peace. Because they're not there to get something from you. They're there to give you everything you want. Not only everything you need, everything you want, they will give you. Because they are lovers of Imam al-Hussein, and they are following the culture of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. And this is Arba'in. Brothers and sisters, if the people of the world come to know about this culture of Imam al-Hussein, what will happen to the world? Today, everywhere in the world, people are looking only after themselves. They only worry about themselves. Me, myself, my family, my money, me. That's it. If the people of the world see what happens in Arba'in, they know that the people there are not worried about themselves. They're worried about their akhirah. They're worried about something bigger than themselves. It will change the hearts and minds of the whole world. That's why the enemies of Allah, the enemies of humanity, the enemies of the Ahlul Bayt want to hide it. They hide. They don't want the people of the world to know about this big sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Brothers and sisters, it's our job to spread the message of Allah. It's our job. Every Shia, every lover of Imam al-Hussein has to inform people around them about the Arba'in. Inshallah, we have here a walk for Arba'in as well, inshallah. I request and urge all families to come out with all of their children, all of their relatives to come out. Inshallah, on the day that's been mentioned, I believe it's Sunday morning, not tomorrow, but next week, Sunday. Inshallah, please make sure we make it in big numbers and we share the message of Al-Ba'in with our family, with our friends, with our neighbors. And inshallah, we share about the message of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Inshallah, we will wrap up with a few words of musibah as we remember Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam and his family and companions. Sallallahu alayka ya Aba Abdullah wa ala al-arwah allati hallat bi thanaik. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. Brothers and sisters, we're reminded by Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam and his family and companions of the very many signs of Allah on the plains of Karbala. But not only these signs, every single shaheed in the way of Allah, every single companion in the way of Allah, Imam al-Hussein, every single family member of Imam al-Hussein was one of the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It reminds us, he or she reminds us of the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Brothers and sisters, we also see the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Sham. The daughter of Imam al-Hussein, Ruqayya bint al-Hussein, is also one of those signs of Allah, of the mission of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, who's buried in Damascus. As we recount the tragedy of Karbala, we recount the tragedies in Kufa and the tragedies in Sham, we realize that Imam al-Hussein's 3-year-old daughter was one of those children who was very dear to Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. We find that Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam used to call out to her. Every night she would sleep with her daddy. And Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam would remark and say, I do not like to be in a house where there is no Ruqayya. I do not like to be in a place where my daughters Ruqayya and walk around me. Lady Ruqayya salamullahi alayha was imprisoned along all the ladies and Imam al-Sajjad in the prison of Sham. But when her attachment to Imam al-Hussein family and his companions, by the right of the Lady Ruqayya, and by the right of Abdullah al-Rabi, Ali al-Saghir. We ask you, O Allah, hasten the reappearance of the Imam, the time. O Allah, make us from those special companions and helpers of the Imam alayhi salam. O Allah, help us to see your signs around us in nature, in creation, in human society. O Allah, give us tawfiq to be able to have the ziyarah of Imam al-Hussein in this world, especially in Al-Bahrain, and to have the shafa'ah of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam on the Day of Judgment. O Allah, we ask you by the right of Imam al-Hussein and his family and companions to grant us tawfiq to do tarbiyah of our children in the way that will please you. And O Allah, we ask you to keep us with the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt in this dunya and the akhirah. Wassalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
تفضل يا ابو الانفاس. لا لما كان هو اصلا كان مفتوح.
الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا مولاي يا أمير المؤمنين ويعسوب الدين وإمام المتقين علي بن أبي طالب ورحمة الله وبركاته. الصلاة والسلام على سيدتي ومولاتي الصديقة الطاهرة الشهيدة المظلومة فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين ورحمة الله وبركاته. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا مولاي يا أبا محمد الحسن بن علي ورحمة الله وبركاته. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك وأناخت برحلك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد من زيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته.